Hi, all. This is Tom Broussard. It's good to see everybody again. Um, this is another interesting article. This is about the structure, the habitual therapeutic structure uh, to be used, to be created prior to the end of your formal therapy. Um, it's so interesting. Therapy for us with stroke and aphasia are so interesting to us because there's so much that goes on underneath the surface of all of this. Because when I started with my speech therapist. Um, very few hours, just because that's the way the insurance works. I had 30 sessions, half an hour each, about 15 hours of therapy plus some homework spread across for 6 months. Um, and as I got better along the way, I began to think about what else I should be doing other than the 1 hour a week of therapy. Um, and it's always been my habit to keep track of my life, as it were. I always had a really good calendar. So I kept my calendar, started my calendar again, and um, started a diary right after my started my speech therapy. And um, I didn't know at the time that what turned out to be a 500-page diary, that what I was doing was highly therapeutic. On top of whatever hours I'd gotten from the therapist, the diary itself, writing in a diary, is highly therapeutic because the activity itself. Um, so I started writing in my diary. Then I had to keep walking, so I started walking around town. Got as far as 14 miles. That's as far as I could get. And that was to get to my therapy um, rehab hospital, 14 miles across the turnpike at Boston. And then I didn't drive, I didn't walk back. My wife would come get me there, but that was the longest driving I had done. Believe it or not, today is June 21st. Um, and 11 years ago today was my open heart surgery. And that really was the beginning of all of what has happened to me in the last 11 years with the stroke and several other health issues along the way. Um, but the back to my therapy work, and starting my diary, and then starting walking, and then starting recording myself with my phone. Um, Kept my calendar running. And as time went by, um, getting closer to the end, by then I realized that everything I'd been doing was basically starting to crowd out anything else. You know, I had to go, still had to go to lots of doctors' offices, and certainly to my OT and SLP and PT. Um, but all of a sudden, I was very, very busy doing all this other keeping track activities. Yet it took me years before I found out just how therapeutic all those activities were, because the way the brain works, it induces plasticity, and that means that it is converting. Plasticity is converting um, thought and cognitive activities into new brain matter. I didn't know any of those things, and I was never really told that. I was never told that. I read about it later, but I now urge people to start this, what turns out to be this structure, um, because when I finally got done with my therapist, I realized that the only thing I was losing was that 1 hour a week. Um, the other 39 hours of the week were spent doing all these activities I've just described to you, and not realizing that all those different modalities, using those different modalities, the way you can approach them from different perspectives of reading, writing, and speaking, um, provided all of the additional quote therapy that I got as a result of doing what I was doing, obviously quite intensive. Um, so I do continue to urge the therapists themselves, and I do this because several people have been writing to me as a result of what they've been reading before, and said, you know, you really have to write more of these articles, because they've been reading from my books, and said this thing about the structure, this habitual therapeutic structure, which was always my habit to be, and all of us have habits that are successful in life. Um, and using those habits as well as other new habits that you will grow while you are with your therapist, but do all those things and put them together and realize that that structure helps you after your therapy is done. Because for the 50 hours or so of formal therapy that I got before, that particular year, I got 1,700 hours of my own. So you get to begin to get an idea, at least I did after a year or two, how important it was to do all of these things that were otherwise called just life. I really didn't know that they were, quote, therapeutic, that they would actually create. I didn't know what plasticity really meant, but convert all of those activities into brain matter. Now realizing that if you don't do those things, and you've lost your with your therapist, and you don't have any groups around you, then you're going to have less ability to grow more learning material. And I know it's somewhat of a metaphor, but learning material is the way the brain works. It's a connectivity of these millions of fibers of wires, basically, and millions of cells that create the network that allows one to now be bound together and understand what it didn't understand before when they were just one cell or another cell. So they really have to come together, and they do that based on these activities. But again, um, it wasn't until later. So we therapists, all of us, myself, have to create this structure early in life and set that up so that when that last person leaves, the therapist leaves, you have that structure going forward and continue to do all of the therapeutic activities, otherwise called life, but now with a purpose, because now you can realize that if I do these things, I will get better based on the way the brain actually works. It will rewire my brain. And if I don't do those things, I will not be as healthy and as improvement with my language if I hadn't done all of those things as well. So it is very important to be told in advance that you have to do these things, and this is why you have to do these things, to build that structure, and then that structure then builds the momentum of plasticity going forward every day, every week, every month, every year for the rest of your life. Not unlike what you had done before your stroke, like me. I didn't realize. I only know what I know about the brain is the last 11 years. Before that, I had really had no idea how the brain processes the world around you. I just sort of took it as faith. You know, obviously that's the way it works, and I really didn't understand the science behind it. It's not until after your brain is damaged that you actually get to see some of the um, damaged components and realize that they actually are so powerful that they can regrow what's damaged into something that is now healed. So, and to be told all of that early, sometimes often, because at the beginning I didn't know what I didn't know. I was told things that I really didn't know. I've been told that the day after. So the therapists have to continue to tell us on a regular basis and give us materials so we can take it with us. We can take it home. We can read it on a regular basis. And it's not like it has to be something big that has to be read repetitively, but to actually read like I do here with the ABCs of aphasia, you get to read it and continue to see the different angles by which you can bring in that information into your head. Because um, the only way you learn anything is by bringing this information into the brain and working on that on the inside. So all of these activities, starting with images, turn out to be highly therapeutic as you consider that this is useful, even before you come to the realization that this is useful. Excuse me. So, uh, way beyond formal therapy, you have to create that structure that allows you to have this personal therapy ready to go when you've lost your therapy. And that provides all that activity, all the structure provides the stimulus that builds the momentum of plasticity on a day-to-day basis, coming at it from every modality: reading, writing, and speaking. Motivation is huge. What made you motivated before your stroke for your whole life? How did you become who you were the day before your stroke? What motivated you to do what you used to do? And then think back into that and think about how you became motivated back then. Use the same ideas that you had before, use them again now, going forward. And realizing that a huge component of all of this is really thought derived, cognitive activities derived. Um, and that is, in fact, the conversion from one thing to another, meaning converting thought into new brain matter. And it is quite the same as converting sunlight, photosynthesis, converting light into green leaves. And the same thing happens with plasticity. It converts thought, and it might as well be called sunlight, into new brain matter. So it is very important to have these conversations with your patients and the family, if need be, about the need to not only to do these activities, but to be aware, to have a purpose for why you're doing these things. If you do these things, you will get better. You do more of these things from different angles to it, you will get better. As I said in that picture, all of these different angles, as you go around and around and around, that is how the brain works. And we need to be told that before we leave, and leaving without really understanding that all of the activities we were doing with the therapist, as well as what you have to do now for the rest of your life, is how you get better. You have to be told that from the beginning. Otherwise, you might have missed that one particular class, as it were, and missed all of the important parts that would help you when you are now pretty much on your own, because it has to be so self-directed. Unless you find a group, and there are lots and lots of groups and organizations, but they're still not enough. They're still somewhat scattered, and they're sometimes difficult to find if you never knew about it in the first place. So that is it for today. Ensure that everybody you talk to the therapist about why it's so important to build this structure prior to leaving formal therapy and starting that new lifelong journey towards improvement. Nice to see everybody. Have a good summer, and I will see you next month. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.